Hello, and welcome to Opt to Thrive, episode 39, Creatine Crash Course for Midlife Women.
Welcome to Opt to Thrive, your go-to podcast for women's wellness in midlife, designed to educate, support, and inspire you to live your very best life. And now your host, Dr. Karina Sims.
Hello. So it's been an amazing day today, a beautiful spring day. My tulips have made an appearance. Their little leaves have popped through the ground. I'm so excited to see them coming through. Such an exciting time. I wrapped up my 6-day Midlife Reset Challenge, which was super fun. By the time this airs, it will have been probably a little while ago, and I absolutely will do it again one day. Maybe early in the new year. So keep an eye out for that in case you missed it this time around. I just want to say it was absolutely amazing. The girls who joined in, we had 74 people sign up for the challenge, and we had lots of engagement, lots of fun, lots of photos being posted, lots of discussion. It was great. I did my first lives. I was terrified to do them to begin with, and then it got easier as the week went on. Just really unsettling talking to a screen. I can only see myself, at least here while I'm talking to this microphone. I don't really see anything, just the microphone and outside my sunroom. But it was great. I really enjoyed it, and by the time that this airs as well, I will have been into my next round of Midlife Reset Women, which is going to be so fun. I cannot wait to see who joins me this next round, and I really look forward to the next few months with them. And I'll keep you posted. All right, so today we're going to talk about creatine. We're going to do a little creatine crash course, because I get asked about creatine a lot. So I thought it'd be worthwhile doing a whole episode just on creatine. There was a time when I thought about creatine, I thought about big, muscly bodybuilder gym bros. It wasn't until I started lifting weights more seriously that I really looked into it myself. I started to hear all of these benefits, and I wondered if it was something that I should be taking. And it just so happens to be at a time when protein has also been getting a lot of publicity. And along with protein, I think that there's been more talk about creatine as well. There's also been more information coming out about possible usefulness of creatine for other things besides muscles, like brain fog during menopause, dementia prevention, cognitive protection against concussion, and even some talk about it being beneficial in helping to treat depression. So I wanted to break that all down today and help us all understand what it is, how it works, what the evidence tells us in terms of its many reported benefits. Are they fact or fiction? We'll talk about its safety. Are there any risks involved in taking creatine? And then we'll talk about how to take it if you decide it's something you want to try. Okay, so let's start with, what is creatine exactly? Often people think it's a steroid, but it's not a steroid. And some people think it's an amino acid. But it's actually a compound made up of 3 amino acids. Now, remember, amino acids are what make up proteins. So creatine's a natural substance that our bodies use to help make energy, especially in our muscles and brain. You can think of it like a backup energy system that kicks in when your body needs a quick burst of power, like when you sprint or you do heavy weightlifting. We'll talk more about the actual mechanism in just a second. First, I want to talk about where creatine lives in our body. So almost all of the creatine in our bodies is stored in our muscles. So 95% of the creatine in our bodies is in our muscle. About half of it comes from our diet, mainly from animal products like meat and fish. But our bodies also make creatine using amino acids from protein, in particular arginine, glycine, and methionine, just in case you wanted to nerd out a little bit. Interestingly, because vegans don't eat meat, they don't get any creatine from their diet. Their body has to make it all. This manufacturing process in our bodies happens mostly in the liver and kidneys, and then there's also a small amount being made in the brain and pancreas. So how does creatine work? To understand this, we need to talk a little bit about biochemistry. I'm going to keep it pretty basic, but I am going to take you right back to high school biology. We're going to start with ATP. All the cells in the human body use ATP as their primary source of energy for cellular processes. So to do the things that they do, whatever things that they're made to do. Our bodies run on this thing called ATP, which is short for adenosine triphosphate. Tri meaning it has 3 phosphate groups. I point this out because it's important in understanding how creatine works. So remember that for later. Don't worry, I'm going to remind you. Now, long story short and simplified, ATP generally comes from processes that use the energy released from the foods that we eat or the foods that we've overeaten and so have been stored to use for energy later. Now, as I said, ATP is made up of 1 adenosine and 3 phosphate groups. When our body needs energy, like during a workout, it breaks off one of those phosphate groups, and that is what releases the energy. Once that phosphate is gone, ATP becomes ADP, adenosine diphosphate. So now it only has 2 phosphate groups. In order to get energy from it again, it needs another phosphate group put back on it so it can be ATP and then be able to give you energy again. And that is where creatine comes in. When you take creatine, it gets stored in your muscles as both free creatine and creatine phosphate. And when you need to quickly recharge your ADP to get ATP and use it to get more energy, the creatine phosphate is standing there ready to quickly give up its phosphate so that ADP can become ATP and can do its thing again. This is really helpful for things that take really short bursts of intense effort, like lifting weights and sprinting. The body can make ATP without creatine, but it's a slower process. So having that creatine phosphate ready and waiting gives our muscles quicker access to more energy, which means we can get more out of our workouts. We can train harder and we could also recover a little faster. And this is where there's good evidence for creatine. It can help us build muscle if we're also doing the weight training along with it. But the effects aren't huge for women in this perimenopausal to postmenopausal period. It looks like it may help us increase our muscle mass somewhere around 0.3 to 1.1 kilos over a 3 to 6 month period. Again, though, it has to be combined with resistance training. Younger people do seem to get a bit more benefit. Now, as far as other benefits, the main one we see a lot of claims about in the land of social media is for brain function. And I suppose in the population I'm most likely speaking to now, that would be brain fog of menopause and sleep issues. Unfortunately, there isn't amazing evidence to support it for cognition. There is some evidence that for those with extreme sleep deprivation, clinical depression, traumatic brain injury, or Alzheimer's, that it could be effective, but it might also not be. We just don't have enough evidence yet to be sure. It is thought, though, that if it was helpful, it would likely be in high doses, which can cause some gut issues like diarrhea. The generally recommended dose of creatine is 3 to 5 grams a day. Looking at the studies around cognition, they're looking at doses of 10 to 20 grams a day, so really big doses. The same is true for creatine and depression. There may be some benefit, but more work needs to be done, and I certainly wouldn't advise its use in the place of an antidepressant. Creatine's generally pretty well tolerated at those recommended doses, and again, that's generally 3 to 5 grams a day. There may be some mild gastrointestinal symptoms like diarrhea, muscle cramps, and weight gain. Those are the most frequently reported side effects. The weight gain is usually small, and it's because the muscles can retain some water when you take creatine. I've seen some people concerned that it might cause kidney damage, but at recommended doses, there is no evidence that it does. I've also seen claims that creatine can increase testosterone levels and it can cause hair loss or balding. But again, no evidence for this either. You may also hear of people creatine loading, which means higher doses for a short period of time to get the muscles saturated or as full as they can be with creatine. Some people load with doses up to 20 grams a day, so 5 grams over 4 doses split over the day. Now, this isn't really necessary. If you're taking the 3 to 5 gram dose per day, over about a month's period, your muscles will get saturated. And then if you miss a day here or there, it's not really going to matter much. Creatine monohydrate is the most common form of creatine, and it's most often found in a powder. It's pretty easy for the body to absorb. A lot of people just put it in their coffee or their smoothies. There is a such thing as creatine gummies, and I will just mention that there was a recent report on third-party testing for creatine gummies on Amazon, and they found that 4 out of the 6 most popular creatine gummies had almost no creatine in them. Oops. Buyer beware. While we're on gimmicks, I'll point out also that there is no such thing as a different formulation of creatine for women or for menopausal women, which both apparently have been making the rounds on social media as special formulations. There is no such thing. My general recommendation is that if you aren't lifting weights and you're not getting enough protein in your diet, then I probably wouldn't even bother with creatine, because building muscle is where the evidence is strongest. And even there, it doesn't appear to be a huge benefit, especially as we age. Some people do try it though, just to see if they get any cognitive benefit, and it's not going to hurt, but it may not help either. Hopefully though, those studies on cognition will pan out in the future, and then it may be more seriously worth considering. I have taken creatine intermittently. I did take it for some period of time. I'm not sure that I noticed a huge difference. And my school thought it's not going to hurt. And if it can give some benefit, then, that's why I thought I'd give it a go. I had increased it to a higher dose just to see if there was any cognitive benefit, especially way back in the day when I was suffering a lot with the cognitive effects from this whole menopausal thing. And I didn't really notice any difference. So that's my own kind of take on it. I hope that this has cleared it up for you today, guys. Hope it's been helpful, and I hope that you are all building your muscles. It's so important. I don't think that I can overstate or say it too much how important our muscle mass is, and if we're building our muscles, we're keeping our bones strong, and we are looking after our health. So I hope you're out there building as much muscle as you can. Have a great week, everyone. And until then, I hope you opt to thrive.
The Opt to Thrive podcast is designed for information purposes only and is not engaged in the giving of medical advice. The information provided on the podcast should not be used for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease. In no way should the information provided by Opt to Thrive be considered medical advice, and at all times the advice of a medical professional should supersede recommendations from Opt to Thrive. If you have or suspect you may have a health problem, you should consult your healthcare provider. The views expressed in this podcast are purely that of Dr. Sims and do not in any way reflect those of the institutions she contracts her medical services to.
Thank you for listening to Opt to Thrive. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate and share the podcast. You can visit our website at opttothrive.com and leave a comment for any subjects you would like to hear more about.